Jebusites. Right. Messengers, cedar trees, carpenters, and masons, and they built David a house. Number 6. Why did Michal despise David when he returned with the ark? She saw him leaping and whirling before the Lord, and she said that he was uncovering himself in the eyes of the maids of his servants as one of the base fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. You're not acting like you should be acting, basically, is what she was saying. She was telling him that he was acting like a base fellow. All right. Number 7. Which prophet received the word of the Lord after David expressed a desire to build a house for the ark of God? Nathan. You see Nathan several times throughout David's reign. Number 8. What did David do with the silver, gold, and bronze articles brought by Joram? He dedicated these to the Lord along with the silver and gold that he had dedicated from all the nations which he had subdued. Number 9. What did David do for Mephibosheth? Yeah. He restored all of Saul's land to him. Gave him a place at the table. That's a high honor. And he appointed Ziba and his 15 sons and 20 servants to work the land for him as well. Number 10. What did the princes of the people of Ammon think about the comforters that David sent to Canaan? They didn't trust it. They thought that they were there to search out the city, to spy on it, to overthrow it. So there was a lack of trust. Okay. Any questions over the reading section? All right. Let's go to our discussion slide. Not behind on this screen. Sorry about that. All right. Number 1. Discuss David's lamentation over Saul and Jonathan. It's recorded in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verses 19 through 27. Robert.
The lamentation was more of a eulogy of Saul, but without any reference to his faults or his sins. There's a statement about how are the mighty fallen. This particular statement has been used many times funerals to give credit to those who have fallen. There's another one that he says, tell it not in Gath. David didn't want to give credit to the Philistines for the defeat of Israel in battle. So he didn't want his people to mention that in Gath. David also praised Jonathan as a fallen warrior. His love for him, and he wanted the women to weep and recognize the great advance in prosperity and culture that King Saul provided during his reign.
Any other thoughts? And I think that's something that we really need to recognize. It is the forgiveness aspect of this, right? Have you ever been to a funeral and you think, that preacher sure don't know that guy very well, right? Because he says all these nice things and he doesn't say anything at all about his everything that David said was any of that untrue? That's the thing we have to keep in mind. David, his attitude towards King Saul, his deep reverence for him as the Lord's anointed, he held a high respect for him because of that. Now that Saul had departed from this life, how does David view him? Because he's been chased by him. He's been living his life on the run, hiding from Saul. So did he rejoice here that the man who made himself his enemy continually had finally perished? He was no longer going to be hunted by this man possessed by a distressing spirit. David still had that deep reverence for Saul, for his position in the Lord's plan and purpose. Many complimentary things are said about the king in these verses. And you know, when we look at how he views him in light of how he was viewed by the king, he didn't seek vengeance. He didn't seek to set the record straight. He practiced a much more noble mindset, forgive and forget. The world has accepted William Painter's conclusion that vengeance is sweet, but forgiveness is sweeter than revenge. To rise above the hurt, the pain, and forgive. Jesus prayed while on the cross, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. The phrase forgive and forget is a familiar one. However, can we really forget the harms that have been done to us? I think we misunderstand sometimes that part of it. It's not that we forget, put it out of our memory. We don't hold that grudge. We don't continually bring it up every time there's an argument. Well, you know what you said to me last time? If you bring it up again, you never forgave. We need to forgive and forget. Don't hold the grudge. That's what God does. He remembers no more. He doesn't bring to his remembrance. He doesn't throw it back in our face when we mess up. If we've been forgiven, we've been forgiven. Take a look at your heart. Is there any bitterness regarding anyone who's hurt you in the past? As long as that bitterness is there, the person who hurt you continues to control you. They can continue to control your emotions. And the bitterness that you have doesn't hurt him, it only hurts you. So we need to dig it out of our hearts. We need to leave vengeance to the Lord. For our part, we need to learn how sweet it is to throw off that burden of bitterness. We need to learn how to forgive and forget. We need to learn, as Romans 12:18 says, as much as lies within you, live peaceably with all men. David also expressed his love for Jonathan. We can look back at the words of inspiration to see the closeness of their friendship. We were told that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. Jonathan loved him as his own soul. He delighted greatly in David. Jonathan protected David from the wrath of his father. He warned him of Saul's plot to murder him. While David was on the run, Jonathan arose and went to David in the woods. He strengthened his hand to God, an act that would have been considered traitorous had he been caught. Now, as David mourns the death of his friend, he says, I'm distressed for you, my brother Joram. You've been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was wonderful, surpassing the love of women. These two men shared many wonderful qualities that are often absent in people today. Acceptance, despite differences. Giving without expecting anything in return. Trust, How many people do you truly trust? Encouragement. True friendship, though it is rare, is very important. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. Proverbs 18:24 tells us a man who has friends must himself be friendly. There is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. Friendship is very important. Trust is very important. We have to be trustworthy in order to be trusted. Any other thoughts on David's expression of grief? Okay.
He did wish that there would be no rain or dew fall on the mountains.
Yeah. Any others? Yeah.
One more comment. There were many times that David played the harp for Saul. Saul had a temper. And I think there were on some occasions that Jonathan asked David to come in and play the harp, to calm him down, to really calm Saul down. And I think through all that time of David being around Saul, I don't know if he loved him, but this lamentation shows that he didn't have any animosity towards Saul.
I think it does say that they loved each other. Now, Saul changed over time, but it doesn't say that David ever lost that love that he had for Saul. All right, question number 2. The action of Rechab and Baanah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing their names right. Those actions show the danger of self-serving ambition with no regard to God's will. Where else do the scriptures warn against such ambition? Rob?
Proverbs 21:5 said, plans of those who are hasty surely to poverty. In other words, if you're hasty about something, self-serving, it's going to lead to the wrong path. Philippians 2 verse 3 says, let nothing be done through selfish ambition. James 3:14, if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. 1 Peter 5:5, God resists the proud. It tells you right there. And 1 Corinthians 13:5, love does not seek its own. And the last one, Romans 2:8, those who are self-seeking results in indignation and wrath.
Others? Okay.
Galatians 5:19-21, Isaiah 14:13-14, Genesis 11:1-9, 2 Samuel 15-18.
Any other thoughts? Okay. So y'all mentioned most of the ones I had too. A couple others. And we see in Philippians 2:3, which Robin mentioned, Ephesians 4:29. I don't think anybody mentioned that one. No, let no corrupt word proceed out of your mouth, but that which is necessary, which is good for necessary edification, that it may impart grace to the hearers. There's a time and a place for calling out sin and error. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the bullying mentality of many who simply try to elevate themselves by making others look bad. There are negative commands against this attitude. There are positive commands that we should act instead. How we should act instead. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 is one of those positive commands. Comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing. And we see several examples in the scriptures of people acting selfishly, seeking to elevate their standing or to justify their actions. Prior to the account that we have here in 2 Samuel 4, we had the Amalekite in chapter 1 who took the credit for Saul's death. He was seeking to lift himself up in the eyes of the new king. He thought he would be rewarded by David. But what about the men involved in the building of the Tower of Babel? They mentioned this one. Genesis chapter 11 and verse 4 specifically, what was their aim? What were they trying to do? Were they looking to please God? They said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Another example found in the Pentateuch is that of Korah. He incited people to rebel against the authority of Moses in Numbers chapter 16. But God intervened, and he and his followers were punished for their attempted insurrection. In a few weeks, we'll be studying one of David's sons, Absalom. When we get to chapters 15 through 18, we'll be introduced to him in chapter 13, I believe, but chapters 15 through 18 really highlight the selfish ambition that Absalom had that drove him. He desired to usurp David's authority and throne, and the results were a civil war and his own death. Even among the Lord's own apostles, there were improper attitudes. Brenda mentioned Mark chapter 10. James and John, the sons of thunder, they made that brazen request, let us sit one on your right hand and the other on your left in your glory. And the reaction of the other apostles, they were greatly displeased with James and John. We just talked about the importance of friendship. As we discussed David and Jonathan, here we see the danger of selfishness and how it can hinder those close friendships. Any other thoughts on number 2? All right, number 3. What do we learn from the events surrounding the moving of the Ark of God in 2 Samuel chapter 6?
First of all, David consulted all the leaders of Israel before moving the ark, but he did not consult with God. Should have been the first thing he did.
Yeah.
He also didn't follow the proper rules of transporting the ark. And because of that, I don't remember exactly how they were supposed to carry it, but I know the oxen stumbled and it caused the ark to tip. And Uzzah lost his life because he reached up and touched it so it wouldn't fall. But you're not allowed to touch the ark, and only the Levites can move the ark. There's a lot of different pieces of this. And the ironic thing is, David knew this. But I think in his haste to move the ark, he took shortcuts. Cost a man his life.
Any other thoughts? The leadership of David, first of all, involving the other people. Yes, he should have consulted God. Absolutely. I don't disagree with that. But from the human standpoint, he showed very wise leadership by talking to the people, getting everybody on the same page. It's not just David's project. This is Israel's project. By involving all of the leaders and getting the approval of the people. And in 1 Chronicles chapter 13, verse 4, all the assembly said that they would do so for the thing was right in the eyes of all the people. Now, we know that's not always a good thing. If what happened in the book of Judges, every man did what was right in his own eyes, right? That's not always a good thing. Did David need their permission? He was the king. He could do whatever he wanted. But getting them on the same page showed a desire for unity and unification.
Do you think, though, that also showed him
The ark represented God's presence and protection. And so, is it wrong to want God to be present with him and to protect him? Now, did he react in the proper way? His wife didn't think he did. I've seen commentators say, well, she was wrong. I don't know that she was. It doesn't say that she was. David was not a perfect individual, as we will see time and time again. We'll see a number of things that he does that are against the will of God. Could have been, but as the king, unifying the people around this rallying point. I think that shows wisdom on his part. Now, again, he should have gone to God. He should have said, is this the right time? Or do you even want me to do this? But he didn't do that. And we see the consequences of that. That he did things that were not in accordance with God's pattern. Good intentions do not always excuse, or do not excuse, not forget the always. Good intentions do not excuse the violation of God's law. The word error in 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 7 is rendered irreverence in some other translations. When Uzzah touched the ark to keep it from falling, God's anger burned against him because of his irreverence. God struck him down and he died. Uzzah probably meant well. We don't know for sure. The scriptures don't say. But his touching of the ark was a rash act, and it was a violation of the commands that were given in Numbers chapters 3 and 4. One other thing we see is the anger of David. The anger of David, it's difficult to determine from the text whether he was angry against God or if he was angry against himself for being the cause of God's wrath. What we do know is that David attempted to do something in a way that was not aligned with the way God said to do it. Putting the ark on a new cart, pulled by oxen, was not the Lord's way. One writer put it this way. It said, in spite of David's unusual intimacy with God, David had to come to terms with the fact that he had overstepped the mark and presumed upon the relationship. Do we ever overstep the mark and presume upon our relationship with God? We must always look to the Word to direct us on how we approach God. Don't rely on good intentions. Don't presume that we know better than God or assume that He will accept our service even if we fail to follow His instructions. We see in the case of Uzzah and David, it's important to do God's things God's ways and don't make it up for ourselves. Yeah, sure.
Also, another good example that we should always go to God and pray about things before we do them in our lives, whether it's with the church or outside the church, or anything we do.
Yeah. When the elders have to make a decision on something going on in the church, prayer's got to be the first step. You know, we can discuss the things that are going on and everything else, but they have to pray. They have to involve God. And it's the same case with everybody. We have to pray. We have to involve God for things pertaining to the church and for things pertaining to our life in general. Am I going to make a move? Am I going to take this new job? Am I going to pursue this relationship, this friendship? Am I going to go after this opportunity? We have to involve God and think about how that's going to impact our service to God. Absolutely. Any other thoughts? David.
May not be a big deal, I don't know, but biblical witness. It doesn't say anything about the ark falling. It says when they came to the threshing floor of Nacon, Uzzah reached out and took hold of the ark because the oxen stopped. It doesn't say anything about the heart or the ark itself falling to the ground or anything like that. So I mean, he reached out and he did what was told not to. Again, like you said, whether it was good intentions or not, that we're made aware of in the writing. The ark was never, quote, in danger, unquote, or falling. So I think that's important, at least in my mind. It's important.
Anyone else? All right. Next question. What are the major themes and promises found in the prophecy 2 Samuel 7, 4 through 16? Right.
A few things that I wrote down. God did not allow David to build God's house, mainly because David had too much blood on his hands. God's house was the temple. But God's promise to make David a house refers to establishing David's name in Israel as a distinguished ruler. And also, there's God's promise here for Messiah to come. And if you look at the first verse in Matthew chapter 1, it starts out the New Testament. It says, Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. That gives that honor to David right there. And we know Jesus came through the lineage of David. The last one I had was David's prayer of gratitude to God.
Any other thoughts? Brent?
Promises are serious duty we should take them seriously. And we should use them and rely on them. And it urges us to be truthful in our things that we want to make a promise. We need to consider not only making that promise, but we will be able to carry it out. Because it helps us to build trust and integrity, and also helps us to build relationships with others. And it demonstrates our moral character and our reliability. Just as Jonathan asked the man who begins to provide everything he's had, and you promise me that you will take care of my family as you, as other kings and the Jews come after David, what would happen to his family if David kept that promise?
A couple of things that's interesting is that Nathan, first, when he was asked, he told David, go ahead and do it. The Lord's going to be with you, whatever your heart desires. Just go ahead and do it. And then, the Lord came back and said, well, wait. But the other thing is this passage and this idea is referenced in Acts when the teachers of the law, the Pharisees, when they're accusing those of striking down the temple and rebuilding it in 3 days. When they're getting on to the apostles, I can't remember. I think it's Peter. I think is who it is. Anyway, they said this fellow was talking against the temple and all of this, that, and everything. Well, this is referenced. It comes back to this, and basically what he's saying then, using this passage is, hey, I don't need a physical house. You guys, and This is what I was telling you. I don't need a physical house. My house is you.
Yep.
And that's part of prophecy in the way that I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I focused more in on verses 12 and following, because I found some really interesting things in my reading. Most of the time we look at this and we say, okay, this has immediate fulfillment with Solomon, eventual ultimate fulfillment through Christ. Brother Kaufman doesn't agree with that at all. He says there's nothing in here that refers to Solomon at all. When God says, I will raise up your offspring after you, Solomon was not raised up after David, but during David's reign. The authority of David himself being the key factor in the enthronement of Solomon. When he says, I will be his father and he shall be my son, not even an angel of heaven deserved such a line as this, much less Solomon, who lived with 700 wives, 300 concubines, and we see many mistakes in his life. The inspired author of Hebrews makes this fact absolutely indisputable. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, includes this phrase, to what angel did God ever say, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son? Psalm 2:7, 89, 26, and 27, Acts 13:33, and other passages in the Bible make it clear that only Jesus Christ was it of Jesus Christ was it ever said that God was his father and that he was God's son. Any notion that this refers to Solomon, according to Brother Kaufman, is ridiculous. There is neither proof nor evidence that Solomon was a saved person, much less that God was his father and that he was God's son in any sense whatsoever. When he commits iniquity, these are the words seized upon by many who wish to apply these words to Solomon, but according to Brother Kaufman, they do not fit at all. When did God ever punish Solomon with the rod of men, or inflict upon him the stripes of the sons of men? On the other hand, the inspired Isaiah, using these very same concepts, said the chastisement of our peace was upon him, that is the suffering servant, the Messiah. By his stripes we are healed. Yes, Jesus suffered for iniquity. It wasn't his iniquity. It was ours. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Your house and your kingdom shall be made sure before me. Your throne shall be established forever. And Kaufman says this great prophecy was doubtless misunderstood by those who first heard it, but there is no excuse for misunderstanding it now, that the long centuries intervening have revealed the exalted meaning of the promise. You remember what one of Virgil's favorite sayings was? The Old Testament is the New Testament concealed. The New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. I don't remember how many times he brought that up during class. And this may be an example of that. The Old Testament prophets did not always understand exactly what they were talking about. They wanted to know, but it wasn't time for them to know yet. But in the New Testament, that mystery is revealed. The Apostle Peter tells us that David says concerning the Christ, thou wilt not abandon my soul to Hades, nor let thy Holy One see corruption. That's a quote of Psalm 16:10. David, being therefore a prophet and knowing that God had sworn with an oath to him that he would set one of his descendants upon his throne, he foresaw and spoke of, not Solomon, he foresaw and spoke of the resurrection of Christ, that he was not abandoned to Hades, nor did his flesh see corruption, Acts 2:25-31. This passage applies to the prophecy of 2 Samuel 7 to Jesus Christ, the one who would sit upon David's throne, not to Solomon, and is noted in Kaufman's chapter introduction, one word from the Apostle Peter is worth a ton of opinions to the contrary. Now, that's Hoffman's understanding of this. I don't know that I'm fully on board with that, but I can certainly see where he's coming from, and I wanted to present it to you as an option of how to understand chapter 7. Any other thoughts on this one before we get to our last section? All right, number 5. How important is it to keep a promise? Consider the vow that Jonathan requested of David in 1 Samuel chapter 20 and how David kept it in the case of Mephibosheth in 2 Samuel 9. Right.
Jonathan asked David to keep his loyalty to Jonathan's descendants. And we know that David truly loved Jonathan. David kept his promise to Jonathan by taking care of Jonathan's son, Mephibosheth. David restored Saul's name to him and also ensured Mephibosheth was provided food and shelter the rest of his life.
Thoughts? When we look at the scriptures, we see the importance of the integrity of our words. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 4, 5, and 7. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to pay it, for he has no pleasure in fools. Pay what you have vowed. Better not to vow than vow and not pay. For in the multitude of dreams and many words, there's also vanity. But fear God. We need to measure our words carefully. We do not have to say every thought that pops into our head. We should not make promises that we have absolutely no intention of keeping. In fact, we should be of such integrity that we don't even need to use the word promise. People should know us as honest, and that if we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it. Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37. Jesus says, "You've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform your oaths to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, nor by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you swear by your head, because you cannot make one hair white or black, but let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Whatever is more than those is from the evil one. Keeping your word, whether it's a vow or a promise or not, should be a part of your character. Everyone should know you for your honesty and your integrity. In the case of David, as he reflected on his life, his thoughts turned to Jonathan. He remembered that covenant that they made, and how Jonathan wanted him to show kindness to his family. Sorry about that. Wanted to show kindness to his family. And David fulfilled that. He restored that land to Saul, to Mephibosheth, invited him to eat at the table, and he took care of him. All right, any other comments or questions? All right, next week, Brother Thomas is going to teach class. I don't know what he's going to talk about. In 2 weeks, 2 Samuel chapters 11 through 14. If you did not get a paper, they are here on the front pew. Thank you all for your time and attention.